Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first of our 2024 BGANZ webinars. Now, thank you for your patience. There was a little bit of a technical issue which we have overcome, and I'm really happy to say that we can leave the delay behind and the show can go on. Now, I'm really happy to say that first of all, I'm going to get myself onto the screen because, okay, so for those of you wondering why it's so dark, I'm coming to you live from the land of the Yolngu people in northeast Arnhem Land. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I couldn't think of a better place to launch our BGANZ May webinar series, because this culture and this country basically is all about the plants. And I'm on a site where there isn't a lot of light. We're camping. We've got 3 great speakers joining us, and we have a wonderful 4-part webinar series as part of Botanic Gardens Month that's going to lead us right up to Botanic Gardens Day on the final Sunday of May. Now, big thanks to the BGANZ committee who have put together some wonderful speakers, three fantastic speakers on each of our webinar evenings, and you'll be meeting them across these Thursday webinars. Please feel free to join in the conversation, everyone, I know you always do. Put your comments up, and we will share your comments as we go. Now, I'm really happy to introduce you all to the new CEO of BGANZ, Cassandra, who joined BGANZ late last year, and she's waiting patiently in the green room, and here she is. How are you, Cass?
I'm great, thank you, Costa. How are you going?
Really well. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to BGANZ?
Sure. So I originally started out as an ecologist, working for James Cook University. Really have always been interested in the environment, love nature. I soon realised, though, that I guess my big passion was about converting others as well. So getting everybody involved in the environmental space and protecting our fabulous world. And so I ended up being the CEO from Earthwatch for some time. And through that, it was a lot of citizen science work, worked on a lot of different research projects, engaging people in plastic pollution, biodiversity, climate change. And then I realized it was time to do something new. And plants are the very foundation of our life. And so it was a natural fit for me to move across to BGANZ so I can start to work with Botanic Gardens to really improve and strengthen the work that they're doing.
Fantastic. And looking forward to the month ahead and the speakers we've got planned?
Definitely. I think Botanic Gardens Day obviously is the 26th of May this year, but there's a big lead up to that, which is this sensational 4-part series of our webinars. And this is just number 1. So number 1 is all about the science and the research. Then this will be followed up by connecting to country. And our 3rd webinar series is about extending conservation beyond the gate, so taking it out into the community. And then our 4th one is all about the value of friends and the diverse role that they play and the support that they provide for Botanic Gardens. So super excited by the webinars. Also a huge number of events taking place in Botanic Gardens across the country and in New Zealand. And so I encourage everyone online to get involved, get down to your local botanic gardens. We will be posting on our socials so you know what events are taking place. But please, make sure you visit your botanic garden on the 26th.
Well, Cass, thank you so much. Big welcome to BGANZ from all of us BGANZ supporters. It's wonderful to have you on board, and we really look forward to what we can do with BGANZ and the story that BGANZ continues to tell across botanic gardens all across Australia and New Zealand.
Thanks, Costa. I just want to say a huge thank you to you as well. Obviously, you're our ambassador for Botanic Gardens Day, and it is invaluable, your support. And so a huge thank you from all of our members. Before you kick me off,
Yes.
Can I just remind you quickly to ask everyone the question around what they think or what words come to mind when you think of a botanic garden? If people could maybe put that into the chat.
Into the comments now, yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
And what we're going to do is at the end of the webinar, ask you to do it again and see if that word has changed. So let's go, everyone. Let us know what word comes to mind. Thanks for that, Cass.
No worries, Costa.
All righty. Well, my apologies, everyone, if you are seeing my fingers like this. They're a little bit scary, but I had a technical issue, and I am operating sound off my phone, and I'm spinning the wheels of steel on my laptop. So here we go with some of the words that are coming in. Let's have a look. Diversity. Thank you. What do we got? Harmony. Incredibly talented staff. Reserve. Sacred space learning. Life. Informative. Highly skilled horticulturists and botanists. Wow. Nature. Beauty. Australian garden. Wow, thanks everyone. It's going off. Sanctuary. I like that one, Genevieve Lawler. And there's more coming in. Speaking of biodiversity, I'm now in a dark paddock in Arnhem Land, and the insects are coming left, right, and centre to a very bright screen. Okay, so let me move the show on, regardless of the insect attack. Now, our first speaker is Maurizio Rosetto, and Maurizio is part of Botanic Gardens of Sydney. Now, Maurizio, welcome.
Thank you, Costa, and thank you to all your fantastic audience there for all the nice words and the nice association with Botanic Gardens. That's really heartwarming to see how much our Botanic Gardens are loved by the general public.
Now, Maurizio, tell us a little bit about how you became involved with Botanic Gardens. What's your background? And then take it away after that.
So, thank you, Costa. And interesting that one of the words that didn't come up through your audience is science. And one of the important things that Botanic Gardens do and contribute to biodiversity is science and a range of different different scientific activities. So myself, I had a research center for ecosystem resilience at the Botanic Gardens in Sydney. And what we are interested in is making sure that our conservation action that we contribute science to conservation action that will manage biodiversity. So you're all aware that we, for example, Botanic Gardens have seed banks where we store our seeds. You all know that we have living collections, and that, for example, we have collection of threatened species. We look after threatened species, and that takes a lot of work and a lot of research to ensure that we can manage this collection in long term. But one of the other things that we're really interested in Botanic Gardens is making sure that, you know, it's all nice and good to have collections of threatened species, but at the end of the day, those collections are not going to be useful if we are not able to put them back in the wild. And so Botanic Gardens also contribute a lot of science to try to ensure that we can do that we can find the right place to bring those species back on, and to ensure that the populations that we bring back will be viable, will be self-sustaining. And so this is some of the work that we and I've been interested in the last 20 years. And to do this, we use genetic tools. You've all heard about the Human Genome Project and how understanding about DNA helps us understand about human populations and help us understand about medical issues. We can use the same tools in conservation, in biodiversity conservation, and use those tools to ensure that we can manage populations within the Botanic Garden and outside the Botanic Gardens in a way that will ensure that those species are conserved for the long term. So that's what we do. That's what our group does in Sydney and many other botanic gardens around the world.
Thanks, Maurizio. So, as far as science and, you know, preserving our plants, talk to us a little bit about the theme.
So, I can tell you a little bit about what we are focused on, right? We try to ensure that populations that are put back into the wild are viable. Now, we all know that in the current environmental conditions, in the current times, there are all sorts of new stresses coming in. Climate change is one that we often think about, but climate change is not the only issue that impacts our biodiversity. We also have issues such as fragmentation. Fragmentation reduces the population to very, very small populations that have low viability. So we do a lot of work to try to understand those processes and how to mitigate those issues. And using DNA and DNA knowledge is one of the ways that we can really support that. Not only for threatened species, but also for restoration practices. So we want to make sure that people restore the right provenances into the wild, that they reestablish populations that are climate ready. And we want to make sure that that information is easily translatable and easily accessible to the general public. So it's not only science for scientists, it's actually science for the general public. And so we do our best to produce and make this science available. And for example, we have a whole range of web tools that are accessible to the general public and can be used to support their activity, their restoration and conservation activities.
It's a really exciting aspect of it, probably from my point of view, is when you see really good signage and storytelling about the science that you're talking about.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's critical to be able to transfer the message so that people know why we're doing what we're doing and how we can achieve outcomes together. It has to be useful not only to us as Botanic Gardens, but also to the community stakeholders that are interested in the science that we do and use the science that we do.
Because the science really is knowledge and observation that has been acquired, but then, as I noticed here, Lorraine Perrins has said in one of the comments, insurance against species extinction.
Totally. Absolutely. And so we can really provide that as Botanic Gardens, like Zoo 2, we really provide the knowledge to be able to hold collections within the Botanic Gardens that will prevent extinction, but also we ensure that we can use those plants, those collections in a way that is really going to make a positive difference to the species and prevent extinction and prevent further problems in the longer term.
We had a question pop up here from Giovanni, and he said, so in seed banks, do they at any stage sow the seeds to see if they are still viable?
All the time, yes. Yes, it's part of the strategy and the monitoring to make sure that the seed are tested for viabilities regularly. That's a very good question. It's a very good point.
And Meg has thrown in there and said, yes, we refer to this as retesting and the viability test.
Yep, indeed.
So another question's come through. How can the general public get involved in your species conservation work?
But that's an excellent question. We work a lot with community groups that are engaged in restoration practices all across New South Wales. We mostly focus on New South Wales because we are a New South Wales government institution, obviously. And we help them in all sorts of different ways. So we help them by assessing the work that they've done to make sure that the viability and the self-sustainability of the population is going to be suitable in the long term. For example, we look at seed production areas that have been established by community groups and test them out. But more importantly, we work directly with some groups that are very, very active in restoration practices. One that comes to mind is the Big Scrub Forest Conservancy up in northern New South Wales. Now, they have been incredible through the years in supporting rainforest restoration throughout the northern New South Wales, the Big Scrub area, but throughout northern New South Wales. And they've become very aware to the fact that seed availability and availability of suitable seed is an issue for all restoration practices. And so they put it among themselves to find the funding and the support to work together with us to do a large scale study that will result in the establishment of seed production areas for over 60 rainforest species in order to ensure that those seed production areas will produce seed that is viable, that is fit, and it is climate resilient. And then those seed can be used throughout northern New South Wales. So there are some community groups that are incredibly successful and incredibly active and participatory into the science.
I mean, that's really exciting in the sense that, you know, we remove any overwhelm or sense of I can't do anything when seed collection on a local scale. The Botanic Gardens across Australia and New Zealand don't have enough staff to simply be everywhere.
Absolutely right. That's one of the big limitations. And being able to collaborate with community groups and being able to think about alternative options such as seed production areas that I've mentioned and seed bank and collaboration between gardens is really the critical, successful way to think about it and move forward. And making information available, making the right information available. As you said, that the science is becoming less and less intimidating. I talk to community groups all the time, and they surprise me by the type of questions that they ask and the type of option that they throw up, even in relatively complex areas such as genetic and genomics. People are much more participatory to the science and want to be involved.
And I mean, this is a great example. from Lisa Fitzgerald. I'm with the Mornington Miniature Koala Conservation, planting another 25,000 trees and plants this year for all wildlife.
And that is fantastic, a fantastic effort. But those are some of the examples that we're always very cautious about, and we try to make sure that people remember that when they're planting so many trees, they source the material from an ample source of seed origins, particularly with eucalypts, because eucalypts tend to prefer to breed between not very closely related individuals. So if you plant a lot of trees from one single source, that can be problematic. So that's the type of information that we're really keen to be able to convey and make it easy to people to understand and do something about that kind of information.
So before you go, Maurizio, what's a way that people can, particularly people listening tonight, but just generally, how can we keep in touch with your work?
So there are many different ways. We have newsletters. You can get directly in touch with the Botanic Gardens. You can get directly in touch with me. But if you are a restoration practitioner and you have questions relating to your practices and want to make sure that you're doing the right things, get in touch, and we certainly might be able to help you out and work with you. We're always keen to really get a diverse range of people to come across and work with us. Plus, there is the web tool. The web tool is Restore and Renew, and you can look on the web tool. And the web tool, you will get information on how to provenance your seed material to maximize success of your restoration practices.
Fantastic. Well, Maurizio, thank you so much for making yourself available for our first webinar. My apologies for a bit of interesting microphone noise. There's this cockroach / beetle that's wedging itself between my computer and my phone and making a sound like there's a Pac-Man chewing on something. And there's all these other insects flying around. But I love it because this is biodiversity, and I'm in tropical Arnhem Land, and I've got the real thing going on around me.
Indeed.
Now, everyone, you can see the tool here. Ellie Cheney and Rebecca have put it up. It's I'll just put it up on the screen here. There it is there.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you.
Check it out. And Maurizio, thanks again.
Thank you, Costa. And hi to all your listener again.
Thanks again, Maurizio. Ciao. All right. Well, there you go. What a fantastic reference that Maurizio's left us with, and a wonderful perspective on the work that he's doing through the Botanic Gardens in Sydney. Now, the thing we need to remember is BGANZ is Botanic Gardens Australia and New Zealand. And I'm really chuffed to be able to say that I'm jumping into my TARDIS now and I'm taking off. I'm leaving the insects behind because you will see here on our flyer that our second speaker is over in Auckland, and she's the Senior Regional Advisor for Flora for Auckland Council. Emma Simpkins is in the green room, and I'm going to bring her in. Emma.
Hi, Costa.
Lovely to have you with us. Welcome
Thanks.
to our first webinar for 2024. It's wonderful to have you join us, and it's wonderful to continue a really special legacy that came out of last year's webinars, and that's women in horticulture. Tell us, before we get started on what you're up to with our theme tonight, how did you find yourself in horticulture?
Yeah, that's an interesting story, Costa. I've always been interested in plants and the environment, and when I was studying at university, I started doing my master's in green hood orchids, which was really exciting, and that led me kind of down the garden path, so to speak, and opened the world into plants and horticulture. And my first role was at Auckland Botanic Gardens, which is where I kind of spent the last 9 years. And have recently moved to this botanist role in Auckland Council, where I have regional oversight of all plants all over Auckland.
From the point of view of regional oversight, how exciting was that to move into a position where you're not just caring for plants within a specific space or microclimate? Suddenly you're dealing with plants in the real urban environment and all of the pressures that puts on the plants and how the community respond to that. And yeah, what's that been like?
Absolutely. It's a really exciting opportunity, a wee bit daunting, but it's really exciting to kind of put those skills and those learnings that you get from working in a garden into practice, and then start to really nut out all those other challenges around, like Maurizio said, how climate change impacts plants in the wild, how natural succession changes our ecosystems, how plant pathogens will impact our plants. They're just basically, being a botanist is like problem solving every day.
Yeah, exactly. And from the point of view of this new job, how has that shifted your connection with the plants?
I'm really lucky that I get to spend lots of time in natural environments, so probably 1 day a week, maybe 2 days a week if I'm lucky. I'm out in the field seeing plants in the wild, doing lots of identifications, supporting community and private landowners to understand what threatened plants they have on their property, and then implementing management to protect them, which is really the main goal of my role, is to prevent any further extinctions in the wild.
And from the point of view of tonight's theme, give us a little bit of an insight into how your science background is continuing to drive your work and your career at this point.
Yeah, it's incredibly useful to have that kind of science understanding, like the things that Maurizio is really touching on earlier, is driving how we prioritize what plants need our attention the most, and then how we manage those. So whether that is in the wild, whether that's supporting weed control, pest animal control, or influencing the hydrology of a landscape, all those things you need to understand, food webs and trophic interactions, and understand how you might be changing an ecosystem. But also then connecting with the Botanic Gardens world and ensuring plants that we are putting in those ex situ collections are really robust, genetically diverse collections. And so all those skills that I've learned over the last decade have been crucial in driving a really robust threatened species program.
So are you finding that you're interacting with the gardens on a regular basis?
Absolutely, yeah. Which is a wonderful thing, to be able to bring together both parts of what I love. And we have established a partnership between both our kind of organisations. We've both Botanic Gardens and my department are part of Auckland Council, but we've brought our skills and our expertise and our resources together into a conservation strategy. We've prioritised our 450 threatened plants to say, these are the ones that need our attention the most, and then this is what we need Botanic Gardens help with, which is about 250 to 300 threatened plants, which is a pretty big amount of work for the gardens, but they're well equipped with their kind of conservation horticultural skills to take on that challenge.
Yeah, and you're really touching on a question that's come through there about how you're going about preventing extinctions.
Yes, so one of the things we do is we do a threat assessment. So we figure out what is threatened, what's the status of our plants. So we published that 2 years ago. And then we identify what those pressures or those threats are. So we've got a big list for every single threatened plant. And then we identify places where we will be able to manage those pressures. So I've just finished that kind of exercise of mapping them out. And then what happens next is then they get put into different management categories. And sometimes we don't have all the right tools and technologies just yet to manage everything, things like pathogens and climate change and the impacts of drought. So one of those big criteria for me is ensuring things go into ex situ collections early before we see significant loss and before we figure out the best way to look after them. So it's a bit of a safeguard while we're figuring out some of those more challenging things to do in the wild.
Do you feel like the challenges have been increasing? I know here in Australia, our botanic gardens have been dealing with so much. Even if you just look at the last 5 years, we've had the extremes of a long drought, then we've had fire, and then we've had flood, and then flood again, and then fire, and now we're going back into drought, but really condensed into a short period. How are those sorts of things playing out over the ditch?
Yeah, I mean, certainly in Auckland, we've experienced some pretty extreme flooding. We definitely see every 3 to 4 years kind of a significant drought period. But one of the biggest things for plants in Auckland is natural succession is one of the biggest threats. So, as ecosystems succeed, usually into forest, that is where we're going to lose most of our threatened plants because they tend to be in like open scrubland areas, coastal margins, wetlands, and in New Zealand, it's very natural for those systems to eventually change into a closed canopy forest setting. So that's the risk for most of our plants, and that's probably quite a difficult thing for us to get our head around, is protecting and putting value on those kind of ecosystems that are not so valued by many people.
From a where to at the moment, where do you have your crosshairs? What's kind of like the mid-range focus that you have in your role when it comes to applying science to saving species?
Yeah, like I said, I guess a big priority for me is ensuring these robust collections are at Botanic Gardens and addressing the things that we can address. Exotic weeds are a biggie, and so that's something that we can relatively easily implement. And so it's picking off those kind of easier wins while advocating for more research to happen. Unlike some big botanic gardens in Australia and New Zealand, we tend not to have herbariums or scientists, those types of roles associated with us. So we really need to ensure that we're partnering with our universities and our Crown Research Institutes to elevate and give the attention that plants need so that we can achieve those outcomes and protect our biodiversity.
Now, you're eliciting quite a few questions coming through from the audience, which is fantastic. Wonderful. Thanks so much, everyone. I'm loving it. They're just popping up, and I'm like, quick. There's more. So the first one was from Kate. She asked, does backyard planting of threatened species help at all?
I think it's a wonderful question, and in short, yes. I can think of at least 2 species that have been saved from extinction because of horticulture, because they are in probably every second garden in Auckland. So one of them is completely lost in the wild, and one of them has a single plant on an offshore island. And without horticulture, that plant and that genetic diversity would be completely lost. So there is real value in having distributed collections of plants, and whether that's in a home garden or in multiple botanic gardens, as BGANZ facilitates in many places, there's lots of options. So, yeah, absolutely.
Sarah asked, how are the changes impacting on wildlife over there?
In terms of environmental things, we've got a very fragmented landscape. So when we see declines in like our birds and our lizards, we start to see that impact our flora as well, where we're seeing things not being pollinated, or things that kind of reproductive failure start to happen. And so that's definitely one way that science can help us, is looking at how we can overcome those barriers to get plants flowering and fruiting, and a bit of more heavily kind of input from us.
Ellie asked, I should say, so do you need to introduce disturbance to maintain diversity?
Yeah, Ellie, you're right on the mark there. Yeah, most of our native plants in Auckland require disturbance at quite a regular frequency. So whether that's like a slip or not so much fire isn't so prevalent in New Zealand, but that kind of more wider landscape disturbance to keep shrublands open is absolutely important, but it's probably not something that we've thought much about or implemented yet. So it's something we're exploring at the moment.
Yeah, okay. Giovanni said one of the biggest safeguards that would stop a plant not becoming extinct will be commercialization of the plant to get it into people's big backyards. Is that something that you would use and are tapping into? I know Kings Park Botanic Gardens, Digby's doing amazing work over there with lots of WA species.
Yeah, it's something we haven't got into yet here in New Zealand, and certainly that's something that we'd explore with our Indigenous people is what they'd like to see in terms of that. So, and I know your next speaker is certainly more involved in that kind of commercialising and making threatened plants available to the general public.
Now, Emma, we've got a couple more questions. They're still coming in pretty thick and fast. Let me see. Craig asked, is there a move toward looking after and increasing the microbial fungal networks in soil to build better pest and disease resistance?
Yeah, there's probably quite limited work in that space in New Zealand. Certainly, I know Craig's mentioned fertilising. That's definitely not something that we, when we do plantings into the wild, we try not to use things like fertilisers. Sometimes I think true to mean, keep them keen with plants as well, that you want them to be a little stressed when they go back to the wild. And certainly I think we're underutilising the importance of those microbial communities.
Yep. What's it like having a foot in both the Botanic Gardens and non-Botanic Garden, the local government camp?
Yeah, it's great. I get the best of both worlds, and I think once you've worked in a Botanic Gardens, you really are, an ambassador and able to support other agencies and other departments really understand what Botanic Gardens do and what they can achieve. They're not just a pretty face. There's a lot going on, and I have had the privilege of really elevating the work that Botanic Gardens do through my current role, and being able to kind of strategically include them in planning for a regional wide-led program is probably the best place to put the work that they're doing.
To me, it's so exciting to see that movement of horticultural knowledge and staff in that sense to go from the gardens to the council and bring that level of knowledge and real advocacy to the most local and proactive level of government. And big congratulations. It really excites me to know that this, like the cell wall between local government and the passion of Botanic Gardens is able to flow through, so that local government isn't just mow and blow and you know, literally plant and hope for the best. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, but you know, to have, like, you see it now, you have sustainability officers, you have green space officers, you have horticulturists that are really making green urban spaces matter.
Absolutely, thanks, Costa. And it's, you know, the work that Botanic Gardens do is incredibly valuable, and I think sometimes we see these high level kind of plans to say X, Y, and Z will happen, but we really need that knowledge and the skill to make change and make difference. And you know, my goal is not to see anything go extinct on my watch, and using that will hopefully do that.
I'm tearing up here, because that's such a beautiful thing to have, pushing away and advocating at that level of local representation, that it isn't just, you know, an emotive councillor. It's being driven by a highly skilled and motivated horticulturist. Pippa Lucas asks, what are two species that have been saved? That's a specific one.
Yeah, Pippa might know these plants at the Auckland Botanic Gardens. So one of them is called Ticamanthe speciosa, or the three kings vine, and it's got these beautiful white kind of pendulous flowers. And the other one would be our native kakabeak, the Clyanthus, which has really beautiful red flowers, kind of like the beak of a parrot.
Now, the questions are still coming, but I know that we've got Russell there, and I don't want to. How's our time? We started at 1:15, so we'll go till 1:15, which means 2 more minutes, and then that gives Russell a good 15 to fire up. Hang in there, Russ. I'm loving the questions, everyone. Treasuring our trees. Is it possible, Emma, to share your learnings in local schools so as to inspire future generations?
Yes, definitely. I don't do it so much in my current role, but when I was at the Auckland Botanic Gardens, yes, I often give talks to primary school or high school, or I have still a regular lecture at a third year university class. So I'm kind of trying to tap into every level with my own personal experience and my own work. And I know that the Auckland Botanic Gardens runs an education program for primary school aged children that learn about everything to do with the environment. And when I was 7 years old, went through that program. So, you know, it must work somewhere.
But so true. I mean, what a joy that you're now in this place where, you know, I mean, you can work with the education officers and the sustainability and the library, the local council libraries, and get programs running that are concurrent with the work and showcasing the work of the Botanic Gardens. Like that, because I work with both of these organisations, I genuinely mean it when I say that it's really lovely to see that cell wall. I mean, I'm talking science because it's a science theme tonight, but to see it liquid and allowing things to move through, it's just brilliant that you can be doing this. Now, I think we've got one more question before we go. What is the one piece of advice that you want the public to hear to support the NZ environment? That's from Sarah. Great question, Sarah. Jeez.
I guess because we're talking about plants, it's to think about the environment around you and that everything has a place, and that threatened plants are not just the big things. We're not just looking after the big charismatic things, and at least in New Zealand we don't have many mammals, we've just got our bats. That the things that I'm looking after are these small little herbs. They're tucked away, and so to kind of broaden your knowledge and your thinking around what is important in our ecosystems, and that we might not know that yet, but unless we protect them, we'll never get science to tell us a bit more about their importance in our ecosystems. So.
Oh, thank you. That's great, Emma. All local council Indigenous nurseries are so important, and Paulie just said it's almost a no-brainer that the two should work together. Botanic garden botanists have been leading the way for hundreds of years. Great point on which to wrap, I think, for Emma. Is there anything else you'd like to finish off with, just to put a bow?
No, just to say thanks for having me, Costa, and if there's any questions we missed, I'll pop into the chat and answer those now.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks a lot, Emma. So there you heard it, everyone. Emma's going to hang out, and if you've got any more questions, drop them in the chat. Keep them scrolling over. Thanks, everyone. I can see that there's still plenty of people here, and it's wonderful to now move on from Emma, who's just been sensational. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, Costa.
Now, going back to our... I wish you could see what's going on here. I don't know if I watch the replay, you might see me picking and scratching. I'm not actually picking at my beard. I'm picking insects out because they're flying at a rate of knots. But you can't see them. I actually have to wait now and then because they're going across the screen. So if there's a little bit of a time delay, it's because there's a big moth blocking half of what your comments are. So I love it. I've got to get back in the TARDIS now, and I'm about to fly off back across the ditch. But instead of going to Sydney, I'm heading south to the Royal Botanic Gardens, Victoria, Cranbourne, where Russell Clark is the senior curator. And he's right here. Russell.
Hey, mate. How you going?
Good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you for your patience earlier.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was nice listening to Emma. I could have done that for the rest of the night, I reckon.
Yeah, it was. She's just doing really great stuff. And
yeah,
I loved the connection of her work with Maurizio, and that she was on that side of the fence. And now we went to Emma, and now we're jumping back over the fence into the gardens. How did you become a plantophile?
Yes, well, I think it all started in my grandma's garden, to be honest. So when I was a kid, 3, 4, 5, my grandparents had probably what was an underground garden back in the day. They had a native garden, and that was different to everybody else. So I honestly just remember running around the garden with kangaroo paws and banksias and eucalypts and all of that sort of stuff. And I think that's just stuck with me forever. I'm a gardener at heart, and I love my science, but there's nothing better than getting your hands in the soil and, digging a hole and doing some weeding and all of that sort of stuff. So I think it started there, and I just never looked back.
Wow. And where did your course take you to get to where you are now as a senior curator?
Yeah, so I started as a landscaper and doing garden maintenance, and then I worked for myself for years as a landscaper, so 7 or 8 years, and then got into some kind of natural resource management stuff because I wanted to get into conservation a bit more. And then, look, I did some study. So I was a late bloomer. I went and got my diploma of conservation and horticulture, and then Went to uni many years later and did a science degree. And then I guess the gardens is sort of the perfect combination of horticulture and science. And I mean, I pinch myself, mate, that I'm working at the Botanic Gardens. It's the best job in the world. I'm a native plant nut, you know, so there's only so many places you can get a job like that. So I'm pretty happy.
Oh, so did you end up at Cranbourne, or were you in Melbourne in the city gardens first, or?
No, I started in Cranbourne. So, you know, fully obsessed with Australian native plants. So that's where I wanted to be. So yeah, started as a horticulturalist and then a team leader, and then I was a conservation horticulturalist for a while, and just recently became the curator. So, yeah, as I say, pretty happy, mate.
Oh, we just had a little delay there, but we're back. So let's dive into it. What's driving your work from a science point of view in the saving of species?
Yeah, I think like Maurizio and Emma, you know, conservation is underpinned by good science, and I'm blessed to work with a team at the gardens who, you know, we have a conservation geneticist and a seed ecologist and a botanist and some amazing horticulturalists, and we kind of work together in an integrated way to, you know, go after individual species. So we're building a lot of ex situ populations, which Emma touched on. So this is building populations of species outside of their natural range. So we're growing a lot of these things in the garden, primarily for conservation, but also just to raise awareness and build the profile of especially Southeast Australian plants. That's been our focus in the last kind of 6 or 7 years. We've really turned the collection over, and yeah, we think it's really important to get out there and connect with people and tell the stories. We have so many people who want to do something and want to get involved in conservation. So look, we have all this amazing science underpinning what we do, but I was going to talk a little bit about what we call our community conservation outreach program. So this is getting as many people involved in conservation as possible. So making it accessible. Sometimes, you know, we do things behind closed doors, but we want everybody to be involved. And you look at all of the comments tonight, you know, people want to get involved as local nurseries. They want to get involved, you know, planting plants in their own garden. They want to find a way to help. I think sometimes, you know, threatened species can be a pretty heavy conversation. And it's really nice to provide vehicles for people to be able to feel empowered and actually get involved. So, yeah, I was going to touch on a project called Raising Rarity. And this is about engaging new demographics of people in the work of conservation, and exposing them to, you know, the stories of these plants, but also getting them actively involved. So we have sort of 4 components to this Raising Rarity program. The first one is we get into schools, and this is probably the most fun one. But basically what we do is we select a rare species from the school's area, and we get the kids to come in. They have a discovery day, learn about threatened species, learn about their plant, and then these guys take these plants back to their school, set up little plots where they do a whole range of data collection on how to grow these species. So they'll look at pH and soil moisture and how long it takes to flower and how long it takes to set seed. And then ultimately the goal is they set up a seed lot and they collect that seed, and that goes back into the Victorian Conservation Seed Bank. So we're piloted with 4 schools now. And
wow.
And which is really cool. And a lot of other people are interested as well. So we've just employed our first sort of school project officer for this project. We had Melbourne Grammar at Melbourne yesterday, and we've worked with Penley Essendon Grammar at Rosedale, which is out in the Wellington Shire. And I think we say a catchphrase for that program is, you can't take an orangutan home, but you can take a plant home. And it's really about giving kids the direct experience. I think a lot of conservation work is one step removed. You know, they might be raising money for something, or with this project, they're actually, you know, getting their hands dirty and learning about their plant and collecting seed and looking at it under the microscope and all that sort of stuff. So, we're really looking to expand that project, and that's fun as well. Like these kids are, you know, I had a couple of kids who said they never touched the dirt before, you know, when we set up their garden bed, and by the end of it, they were covered in it, which is what you want to see. You know, it's about providing that experience for those guys. So that's one of our focuses. We're working a lot with local government. So this is timely after Emma's conversation, but we've worked really closely with the City of Melbourne to develop what we call the Threatened Plant Living Collections Plan. And this is about the City of Melbourne getting involved in using a whole bunch of rare and threatened Victorian plant species and planting them throughout landscapes in the City of Melbourne. So they'll be building ex situ populations, but also building, collections and displays so people can engage with rare plants. And we think it's a really nice opportunity to get the message out there. And I probably shouldn't say indoctrinate, but I want to say indoctrinate as many people as possible. Like,
I'm with you.
Behind the scenes, we're trying to indoctrinate, but you don't have to work very hard because people are pretty keen to hear about it. So that's been a really, really interesting project, and we're working with them over the next few years to get as many of these plants into landscapes, and hoping to expand that. We'd love to see every council get involved in growing rare plants from their areas in their landscape. So I shouldn't plug, but reach out if you're on the line and you're a local council and you want to get involved in rare plant conservation. Give us a call.
Plug away. This is what it's about.
Shameless.
I love what you're doing, and it reminds me of a project that was done
probably one of those bugs again.
Yeah, I think it was. I worked with a school in Geelong, and what they did was they sought a threatened species in their area, and then they propagated it and grew it, and then for Mother's Day and Father's Day, instead of having that $5, $10, $20, buy all this landfill in transition, I'd call it, because it was just like, it's different. Next, they actually grew these plants, and they took photos, made a certificate, and were part of exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's really about building that community. We actually saw that at Rosedale, which is sort of in central Gippsland, and it wasn't just the kids who got involved. Like, the teachers were frothing, the parents really wanted to get involved. They're sharing it with other schools. There's a whole bunch of other schools around that region who want to get involved. You know, it's a really exciting project when you see the tentacles of a schools project reach into the community and sort of build its own momentum. So they're going to become the champions of this species, Craspedia caninus, in those areas. And it starts with a couple of kids going home and going, "Hey, Mum," or "Hey, Dad, like, we've got this species that's really important. We're growing it at school, and, you know, do you want to come along and have a look at it or get involved?" So I think it's really exciting, like, seeing the impact of those programs getting bigger and bigger. Like, we want to build those networks.
Well, Lisa's comment is just exactly what you're talking about. That she, took my first eucalyptus trees at primary school and became a horticulturist, koala conservationist as a result. So what you're talking about there is really sowing. It's actually sowing seeds more than collecting seeds. Yeah,
definitely. And mate, these kids absolutely love it. And some of them come up with these wild ecological theories. We had a girl talk about the Jenga principle. She was talking about, you know, the ecology of an area, and if you take too much away, the system collapses. You know, these kids are 10 years old, 11 years old, coming up with these amazing things. They just need to be exposed to it, you know. So it's pretty cool to see.
I am just looking through some of the comments. So, this one from Karen. So rewarding and heartfelt for children and mothers alike. There should be more of this.
Yeah.
Could Russ discuss the rare plants in Home Gardens project?
Yeah, so I noticed a couple of people were asking about that. So what we're trying to do is select and grow a whole bunch of rare species, and we are actually hoping to commercialize these so people can have access to them and buy them from nurseries and get them into their gardens. So it would be a mechanism for us to raise some money for the conservation projects that we do, but also like we get home gardeners and landscape designers and land managers always asking us how can I get these plants, you know? So we've had a couple of pilot sales at the Botanic Gardens in Cranbourne, which were hugely successful, just to see if people were interested. So the plan is where we have Matthew Henderson, one of our horticulturalists at Cranbourne, dedicated to selecting and breeding these rare plants, and we're hoping to have around 10 varieties available over the next couple of years. So hopefully you'll start to see them filter into your nursery shelves, and you can go and put one in your garden at home, which is pretty exciting. Because I feel like we're blessed. We get to sneak a few amazing plants and put them in our gardens at home, and there's so much joy in that, and we want everyone to be able to share in that, you know.
Have a look at this, Russ. This one has got my heart. My daughter propagated a cute little succulent in year 1 for Mother's Day. Every Mother's Day since, so, and 5 years on, we look at how big it has grown in the garden and reminisce.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful?
Oh,
that's amazing. So, Alyssa, I have a 7-year-old daughter, and when we left our last house, she was in tears, and I said, "Look, it's a big step, kiddo, moving to a new house." And I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I don't want to leave my bottle tree." So we actually picked it up, transplanted it, and put it in a new place, and we hug it every week. You know, it's become a symbol of sort of our family, which is pretty sweet.
You know, these are the things that I think we can forget as adults.
Yeah.
You know, that succulent of Alyssa's daughter, like, that's a pet.
Yeah.
And, you know, growing species like and it doesn't have to be a Wallamai. It can be lots of other old species of ferns and things like that. And the challenge that you give this a go, and if you kill it and it dies, well, why? And there's all that scientific inquiry that the three of you are doing as professionals.
Yeah. And I always say to people, like, you're going to have some failures in the garden, just have a crack at it as well, you know, and you eventually you figure out what you're doing wrong. But, I think some people think at the Botanic Gardens we never lose anything, but the secret's out. Sometimes we do, you know, and it's really about, we're bringing so many plants into cultivation that have never been grown before. And that is the challenge sometimes, learning how to propagate them and learning how to cultivate them and get them to persist. But that's fun too. It's awesome having a crack at that stuff.
And that's exactly what Joel was saying. It's great for those who work at Botanic Gardens too. If there's any gaps in your knowledge, a student will ask a question about that thing specifically.
Yeah.
And you're like, I bet I'll do the Dr. Carl and say I'll call you back, Dr. Russell, and we'll answer it next week.
We just handball it to someone next to you, you know.
This one from Treasuring Our Trees. We at Treasuring Our Trees are partnered with over 50 schools now. We love to support your work and collaborate with you.
Yeah. Well, reach out. Honestly, if anyone's doing that sort of work, we'd be really interested to collaborate and also learn off each other what works and what hasn't. And, you know, it's part of building these programs is understanding, you know, the best way forward and building models where the kids can get the most out of it. So, yeah, any time, reach out.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Russell. So can you just run over those two programs again? just for anyone that's just come in, because I noticed the numbers have still been ticking over. There's lots of people have been coming in as we chat. So
Yeah.
the first program was called...
We have the schools program. So it's like the schools outreach program where the kids grow the rare and threatened species. We have like local government programs. So where we're working with local shires and you know, predominantly the city of Melbourne at the moment, but we're hoping to expand that project where they're cultivating and growing rare and threatened plants and putting them in a whole range of different landscape typologies across the city. And we've got the our kind of rare plant production commercialization project. And the last one I just wanted to mention, Costa, was you know, this is kind of a BGANZ / RBGV project, and I can't claim this one. This is from the famous John Arnott, for anyone who knows, our manager of horticulture.
He's lurking. He's lurking in the chat
somewhere. Yeah. So this was his idea about upskilling and helping regional botanic gardens grow rare and threatened species from their areas. So this has been hugely successful. There's now 8 gardens part of that program, and a few new ones as well. Malakuta has just opened a garden last year, and you know, there's a couple of gardens in the Grampians, and you know, Sale Botanic Gardens, Ballarat, Shepparton, Dandenong Ranges as well have been involved. So yeah, it's been a really, really nice project where everyone's sort of collaborating and we're all kind of learning how to propagate and cultivate these plants, and you know, to get to the general public again. You know, people who come into these gardens are learning about the plight of our plants and looking at how beautiful Victorian flora is as well. So yeah, we're looking to continue to expand that project. I think our goal really is to have rare plants in every school, have rare plants in every council, have rare plants in every garden. You know, we say we're first going to take over Victoria and then we're going to take over the world, you know.
But isn't that unreal? Because if you put rare plants in every school, well, then they go from rare to valued.
Yeah.
And they go from threatened or to just, you know, part of who we are.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And, you know, schools as a propagating zone for the kids to collect the seeds and your staff to go and collect what they need when they need. Like, I couldn't think of a better library.
Yeah.
And the children become the custodians.
Yeah. And people sometimes underestimate the brilliance of these kids as well. You know, so some of the things that they talk about and some of the, you know, the concepts that they're picking apart when it comes to rare plants, and you know, there's these little budding conservationists everywhere that, you know, I'm sure some of these kids are literally going to save these species and save the world in the future. So we kind of have a responsibility to give them that vehicle to get involved.
Now, everyone, we've just clocked over the hour. It's 6 minutes over the hour. That's a bit of a Greek timing there. I apologise. Maurizio, it's European timing. Now, I noticed that Emma and Maurizio are still in the green room. So, you know what, Russ? I think I might just call them in and just do a team farewell, because it's been such a treat. Emma, Maurizio, thank you all for being part of our first webinar for 2024.
Absolute pleasure.
Is there anything, Maurizio, you'd like to say in this Brady Bunch setting, looking back across to Emma and then up to Russell after listening to them? Is there anything you'd like to add?
Absolute joy to see how science translates into education and into community involvement. I think that's what it's all about. So fantastic to see the fantastic work that Emma, Russell, and all the other botanic gardens are really doing in this field. So congratulations and great stuff.
Emma?
Yeah, I think, you know, I work with these great people all the time, and I've had the pleasure of working with many people in BGANZ over the last 10 years. And every time I connect, I feel more inspired, and I just feel the passion from people like Russ and Maurizio. And so I think I hope that people in the audience take that away into their home gardens and their love for plants.
Thanks, Emma. And for everyone listening, Emma's 2 hours ahead of us. So thanks for hanging up late. Or hanging out late. You could have hung up. Just say enough of you, Costa. Why didn't you put me on first? And Russ, wrap it up for us, mate.
Mate, I think I just want to say when I do things like this and hang out with people like Maurizio and Emma and yourself and look at all of the comments, it doesn't feel as overwhelming. You know, like these are big problems, but they can be solved, and with enough people on board, you can actually make a real difference. And I think, yeah, I hope that that's what people will go away with from these conversations, that you can get involved and reach out to your local botanic gardens or reach out to your local council and get involved. Just get out there and have a crack and enjoy yourself.
Well, thank you, Russ. Look at me. Someone said I was looking a bit spooky. It is dead set pitch black here, and my light is the beacon for every insect. I can't show you. Like, it's just a seething, moving biodiversity habitat. I know my beard is that at the best of times, but my computer screen makes my beard look like a sort of spin effects, just nothing to see. Wow, I'm pumped. I don't know how I'm going to come down after this. I've really enjoyed it. Maurizio, Emma, Russell, couldn't have rocket launched our series for 2024 in a better way. To everyone who's hung in there, the questions have been awesome. Share the post on, whether it's on your Facebook page or your Insta, or share it through your networks, so that more people can hear about the amazing work that our three wonderful speakers have invited us into. And next Thursday night, we'll be back. I won't be as dark, but the topic was so bright, I think I needed to contrast, because I want the spotlight on our speakers. I'm just hiding in the shadows. All right. Well, thanks everyone for being on board, and we'll see you next Thursday.